Hey, this is Ryan Steele, and you're listening to the Give and Go podcast.
Welcome back to the Give and Go Basketball podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Shreve, along with Ben Sperry and Ryan Steele. Guys, I got to take the blame for this one. I've been slacking big time on getting the stuff out. We do have an episode that I don't even have edited yet, and here we are recording another one. So that's on me. But school's over, softball's over. My life has totally did a 180 flip. So I'll have the time now to get some stuff out. But let's take a look at some stuff that that's happened since we've recorded last. Jokic wins the MVP. Ben, you got to be smiling.
You know, I said this all season. I think at our midway point episode, I thought Embiid was probably the MVP of the first half, but said, I thought Jokic would have a good shot once the Nuggets started moving up the rankings. And, again, I think we said this before. Some people would say he only got it as a participation award, or he's not even the best player in the league or in his own series and all this other crap that you've been hearing from some media personalities. But I think he deserved to win it. He's been the MVP all year long, in my opinion. So, I was excited to hear that he got the MVP award this year.
Steele, as an Embiid guy, does that upset you?
Oh, no. Dude, I think he was so well deserving of it. Embiid missed how many 20-some games in an already shortened season. Jokic plays every game, does the bulk of it down the stretch without his sidekick, his running mate, Jamal Murray. Statistically, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, efficiency seasons for a center in this era, with being guarded by extraterrestrials every night. So it's super impressive. And still, there's this no respect given to him, even though he's the MVP and one of the best players in the NBA. I just feel like it's almost like how the Spurs got no love because they were boring during their stretch runs of just being so good and dominant. I think he gets that where Dame Lillard, if they put the same stat line, you're oohing and awing over Dame's because he made a crazy play where, I don't know, Jokic is great. It's just so quiet and just does it so well. It's not respected as much for whatever reason.
I think it's the distinction between the hardcore basketball fan and the casual almost. And even players themselves sometimes follow into this. The highlight is more important to a lot of people for determining who the best player is than doing everything awesome. And I think that's what Jokic brings is he really doesn't have a weakness in his game. The worst thing he's at is probably moving his feet on defense because he's kind of a bigger dude. But offensively, he has no weaknesses. There's nothing he can't do well. And he does everything at an A to A- level. And people don't like that as much as they like the dudes that have 1A+ thing, whether it's dunking or shooting threes or whatever it is. And the highlight, man, and it's people just want those highlights.
Well, no, I think it's similar to what we grew up on, through teenage years of Kobe and Tim Duncan, where if you ask every casual and even most NBA huge fans, they would say, "Oh yeah, Kobe's." What do you mean, Tim Duncan? No, Kobe's way better than Tim Duncan. But reality, Tim Duncan, throughout his career, dude, the numbers and the championships and being the best player on a team that won, it kind of far outweigh what Kobe did. So,
obviously, we could have that debate more, because I totally agree with you. But
we might. I'll have to write that down. We'll have to come back to that one on another episode. But here's a fun fact for you that I just read today. So in the 4 major basketball leagues, so 2 European leagues, the NBA, and then the ABA, all 4 MVPs were from Serbia. So there's a fun fact for you this year. Also, Gobert wins the Defensive Player of the Year award, something that we talked about a lot. So let's just jump right into the playoff matchups that we're in right now. And let's start with out west. And Ryan, I'll let you go with whichever matchup out west you want to talk about.
So, I think we're right there with Jokic. You might as well just stay with that one. Suns and Nuggets. So I think we all knew coming into the playoffs, no Jamal Murray, they would be, a step below what they were last year, even adding Aaron Gordon. But the Suns just look legit championship team. They have a great mix of veterans with your Jay Crowder, your Chris Paul, guys like that. And then this youth that they have, Mikal Bridges, lockdown. And he's more than just 3-and-D. I mean, he creates, he gets out in the fast break finishes, gets to the line. Even our guy at UNC, Cameron Johnson, like they're putting him in down the stretch of closeout games against the Lakers, trusting these young guys. And then what can we say, man? Devin Booker. I questioned for years, type of player he might be. Okay, is he just a guy that's going to be put up a bunch of numbers and not, make that into his team success? But I mean, look, he gets in the playoffs, dude, and you're seeing it. He's the real deal. And Ayton, shouts out to Ayton too, because you're going against an MVP in your first ever real legitimate, playoff games as a pro. And they're telling you basically you're on an island right now, dude. Like, we'll hold these other guys down, just try to slow that man down. And look, Jokic went off on game 3, but he's done a pretty good job for saying he's not what he was really known for, being a defender. But
don't forget, he did really, really well against AD as well. Like, this is 2 straight series of DeAndre Ayton shown himself to be an elite big defender, which is not what he was thought to be.
And he rebounds the ball really well too. Like I was surprised by he out rebounded AD in the first series when he was out there. He's held it down against Jokic. Even though Jokic is going to make plays, he doesn't ever seem deterred by that. He just keeps playing. Jokic will make 2 lean-in fadeaways on him, and you just got to stay even keel. For a young player, I think that's a big step towards becoming the player that we thought he would be in his career.
Game 4 just started, by the way, as we're recording this. But
as we're doing this, Game 4 starting. Suns looking to close this out in the sweep.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I think it's going to be a sweep. I think the boys going home early, especially Ben. I mean, trade deadline stuff. Aaron Gordon, man, he's been bad for them.
Right. So I think
that was a guy that we thought, we thought would kind of put them over the edge, maybe. And he's just looked so bad offensively throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, so I think the hope with getting in Aaron Gordon is that you add another dynamic piece. He's what Paul Millsap might have been to them a year or 2 ago, but he's younger, he's more athletic, more explosive. He'd be able to cut. He'd be able to give you something defensively. And it turns out like he's done, he's had his moments defensively. He did a pretty good job at Dame at times in the first round. And he's an athletic guy that moves his feet. But the truth is he has not given them anything offensively. And you see this more and more when you play Denver, that teams are just going to be like, okay, look, we'll take our chances with Jokic single coverage. We're just going to take away all the cuts. We're going to make guys like, Aaron Gordon shoot threes, and we're going to dare other guys to create shots. And the truth is, if Michael Porter Jr. doesn't really create shots, he can shoot over you, which is a skill because he's tall and he can do that anytime. But if he doesn't create shots, Campazzo's too small. He can't really create his own shot.
And those guys made Will Barton look like he was Magic Johnson in his prime the way he came out there.
So yeah, you got a situation where Will Barton, who good basketball player, but
so badly
good player, but he's an NBA journeyman almost. He's like their next go-to guy. Him and Monte Morris off the bench in terms of shot creation, and it just looks like a different dynamic than when you had Jamal Murray, who could legitimately create off the dribble and score in bunches, like in the bubble last year. So they're just a much less dynamic team without that guy.
I'm calling it. We got to see Bol tonight, or the Nuggets are done.
Well, here's my one thought, right? Like, I think Jokic, he had a good game 3 in which he tried to dominate, but he actually he missed a lot, quite frankly.
Yeah,
if you get a Jokic 40 piece, if you get a Jokic 40 piece, maybe they can win a game and avoid the sweep. But it looks rough right now.
So let's go to the other series then in the West. We have the Jazz and the Clippers. And as we're recording this, the Utah has a 2-1 lead. So what do we think that series is heading? What do we think that matchup's looking like? Either one.
I think if you're the Clippers, you got to be kicking yourself. Mm-hmm. I think you probably feel like you need to be up 2-1 right now. for the fact that they haven't played their starting point guard and one of their top 3 most important players probably to what they do, and you're down 2-1, and now it looks like he's probably going to be coming back either game 4 or game 5. That, them winning the first 2 kind of saved them an extra day of not, playing him. And then on the Clippers side, you get the news Ibaka's going to be out for the rest of the playoffs. But I think they've been without him for long enough. They know what they're going to do now. But I mean, like Reggie Jackson, this is a dude that he's always been a good offensive player,
Yeah.
but never like a guy that you're like leaning on to like help you win
Yeah.
games like that, I guess.
They do lean on him. That's true.
Not important ones especially, but dude, he's shooting out of his mind offensively right now. And even like game 3, Nicholas Batum and him combined 9 for 12 on threes, which, I mean, in a game that you need to win to basically save your season, that was huge to get that kind of performance from those guys.
And I think that's what it is for the Clippers. The Clippers, they've shown some resiliency this playoffs. But the truth is you need at least 1 or 2 other guys besides Paul George and Kawhi to give you, something or even a lot offensively, whether that's a Morris hitting some threes or Batum or Reggie Jackson's been going off. They need those other guys to do something big, because if it becomes just Kawhi and Paul George, who's had some big moments, but he's also had some inconsistency, then I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. But I do want to shout out that they've shown a lot of resiliency. I mean, they look they're dead against Dallas multiple times. They after 2 games in Utah, it looked like, again, they weren't really going to be able to hang with this team, but they keep on finding, the moments that they need from these other guys to get back into it.
So with that praise, do we heap any of that towards Ty Lue, who takes over for kind of a modern day coaching stalwart, Doc Rivers, who's super respected? Many would say he's top 2, top 3 coach in the NBA for the last 10, 15 years. You say they look more resilient this year. The main change is the head coach. I guess I'm never very good at kind of calculating what role the coach has in changing professional players, especially in the NBA compared to like football maybe. But he does seem more willing to make adjustments, where Doc last year seemed super stubborn to go ahead and change even pick and roll assignments, how they're going to guard pick and rolls and, defensive schemes and stuff. He just seemed more hesitant to change what they did, where Ty Lue's thrown in different looks throughout this playoff. So
right, and 2 that are notable is he went real small.
Playing
against
with
Dallas,
center.
And he's continued to do that. And they've also thrown some zones and stuff in the series as well, which I thought was interesting. I mean, it's the other thing you can speak to with Ty Lue and a history of resiliency is he was part of the coming back 3-1 when the Cavs were able to beat the Warriors. So maybe just having that history, having that ability to be like, look, well, it's not over yet. Let's just keep playing. And, they do got some guys that are veterans. I mean, Kawhi has done it all at this point in the NBA. So
and PG, other than getting to the finals, he's been deep in playoff runs before.
He's played a ton of playoff games too. Not always. Sometimes he's bad, but sometimes he's awesome.
He's easily made fun of a lot of things he does, but he's been great throughout this playoffs. I mean, he's really been on his game, especially offensively. If we go over the other side to Utah, Gobert wins Defensive Player of the Year. Clarkson gets 6th man. Ingles could have been 6th man of the year. Donovan's playing out of his mind right now.
Yeah, he's turning into a superstar.
It's Dame level shot making, but it's kind of like D Wade-ish how he gets to the rim and stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the second straight time in the playoffs he's been unstoppable, because he was unstoppable last year too in the bubble.
Yeah.
Him and Jamal Murray traded 50-point games and stuff like that in the first round. So, Donovan Mitchell playing like a superstar combined with a bunch of guys that can either shoot or play really good defense or both does make for a really good team. Now, do you think the NBA wants a Utah Jazz to be in the NBA Finals? Do they have enough interest for you?
I don't think they do, but I think if LeBron or Steph was still in it, then that would clearly tell you, no, we do not want the Jazz. But because it's not enough. I mean, the Suns are cool, but they're Phoenix, whatever. Nuggets are done. There's no chance they're getting in there. And then the Clippers, like, they're LA, and they do have Kawhi, so that'd be the only team I'd really see that the NBA would really want over Utah for sure. But back to like the on-court real quick. In that series, so Gobert wins Defensive Player of the Year, but the Clippers are going real small. I think, I'm not saying you play him less, but if he's going to be out there that many minutes, he has to dominate. He can't. 12 and 10, that can't be what it is. 12, 10 and a block, it's not going to get it done. Like, he gave up way too many offensive boards to Boogie and just random guys. Like, if you're that guy, Defensive Player of the Year, you have to dominate the glass. Or if I'm the Jazz, do I consider going small? Because if it's me, okay, you're playing Batum, Reggie Jackson, Luke Kennard. I'll trust Clarkson, Ingles, Bogdanovich, all my small guys over your small guys. And go, if you want to go that way.
Yeah.
That's maybe a little adjustment we might see if Rudy continues not to dominate or have an impact on the game.
Yeah.
Because he kills their spacing. Yeah, he stands in the corner, but then they kick it and he can't do anything with it. So I think that's a little interesting thing we might see.
That's true, because his one super value out on offense is his roll man. He can make you guard him. Now, he's not a post-up roll man, though. Like, right? Like, it's more of a vertical lob threat than he is,
right.
A post-up guy. So if you just switch that and you got relatively athletic wings, which the Clippers do.
Well, and defensively, when Boogie and Zubac are out there, that's fine because they're not just going to stand in a corner. They'll move around inside the paint. When Batum's out there, like, he comes to help in the paint and they kick it out to Batum. That's why he went, 5 for 6. He's legit wide open because Gobert can't recover all the way out there. So you might as well play. If he's really not holding down the paint and he has to guard the perimeter, you might as well put a perimeter defender in there if he's not giving you anything on offense, to the glass, or on defense. So just a thing they might see a little change in.
Well, hey, I think this is a good point. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive into the East a little bit and talk about those matchups. This is the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. Ben Sperry, Ryan Steele. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening to the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. All right, welcome back to the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. Before our break, we were talking about the west side of the playoffs. Now let's turn our focus to the East. And I want to start with the Hawks and 76ers matchup. Atlanta came out, took the first game, and then it's kind of been a dominant Philly since then. Why do we think that is? One of you.
Adjustments, right?
Yeah.
Like the first game, Danny Green was primarily guarding Trae Young. Trae Young was killing it. I mean, and giving them a lot of trouble overall. I mean, they're putting Embiid in the pick and roll. He's shooting a lot of runners, hitting a lot of people on the skip passes, the alley-oops to the roll man. And guys like Bogdanovich was hitting huge shots. Huerter was hitting huge shots. So, I mean, they looked really tough. But then Philly responded, even late in that game one, by just going to pure, let's be bigger, stronger, and faster than you, putting Ben Simmons on Trae Young, putting in Thibault.
They almost came back.
and just taking the ball from people. Because, that's almost literally what they started to do. And I think, putting all that length on Trae Young with big guys that are still so athletic does give you a chance to bother him in a way that even Danny Green, who's been a long-time good perimeter defender, isn't able to.
Mm-hmm.
Two things with Trae Young. One, you have to put bigger guys on him that can still move, and the other thing is you have to make him defend. You cannot, like the Knicks had no way to do that because you could just put him on Reggie Bullock or a guy that's not a driving threat that he just is going to catch and shoot. So you have to make Trae, defend and play both sides. But I think, adjustments is definitely one thing, and I think the other two just gets overlooked sometimes in NBA playoff series is if you're the lower seed, if you're the 4 seed against a 1 or, even a 7 against a 2, if you want to pull – game 1's the game to get because, that's the game you can shock a team or, you come out quick and you're like, dang, shit, it's the third quarter, we're down by 16. What is going on? Then by the time you catch on and try to come back, it's too late. So I think that could have been it. They just So Philly had a super easy round one, and the Hawks were kind of in a chippy battle, so they had that going into that series. But I just think unless Embiid is out, it can't play. They just don't have an answer. I just think Philly's too big, too strong, too quick. I mean,
I will say though, the Hawks to me, I mean, look, their second half of the season was awesome.
For sure.
They've really impressed me. Trae Young's impressed me, but they're much further along than I anticipated them being.
Yeah.
And having those like veteran guys, like even if they're like Bogdanovich, it may not be known around the NBA as among fans as much, but like he's been around forever as in Europe and elsewhere. He's an awesome player from Serbia. Gallinari's been around for a long time. Like they got players, Lou Williams coming off the bench. Like that's a really decent team.
Collins has been pretty big.
Collins is nice. I mean, like they got good players. Like
he had been their second best player for the last few years behind Trae. I mean, and I even said it in our never before seen last episode that for the Hawks, I mean, this is kind of ice. This is just like cake right now. Like they're probably a year ahead of schedule. Trae's still super young. DeAndre Hunter's young. Cam Reddish young. John Paul. All these guys are super young. Even they said Bogdanovich is their veteran. He's not like old.
No, he's not old, right? He's these guys had a lot of experience being awesome, like because he's so good internationally.
So I think like to me, if they get 2 games or they force a game 7, that's just big. That's a stepping stone because no team just gets right in and just kind of run. You take your lumps and you take that pain, and then the next year you come back and you try to get better. So I think the Hawks right now, you got to be super happy with where you're at.
Yeah, well, you say that Bogdanovich is old. I mean, he's only been in the NBA for 3 seasons.
And what is he, like 26 or something? I don't even know how old he is.
Well, now you're going to make me do math.
Probably
so he's 28. He's 28-ish. And honestly, Lou Williams is the veteran player on that squad.
Oh yeah, they did trade for Lou. That's true.
Yeah. Him and Gallinari, which Gallinari's my age at 33. Being in Lou Williams 35.
Maybe Capella after those guys.
Capella's actually is actually fairly young yet. He's only 26, 27. So they do have a nice young team. That's going to be around for a while.
Nonetheless, it does seem like it has a feeling of inevitability to it, even if that's not ever really true because things change so quick.
Right, it's the same. Like, Embiid could come out, twist an ankle or something, go down, and Trae goes crazy, and now it's 2-2. That's just how it goes.
That is true, but it does feel like if Philly stays healthy, they're going to get to the Eastern Conference Finals
for sure.
So here's, in my opinion, the most interesting series so far. And that's been the Bucks and the Nets. Big time. Nets come out, look unstoppable, look like they're just going to steamroll them. But you have some big time injuries and the switch from Giannis to PJ Tucker on Durant, and that seemed to do some work. And as we're recording this, Bucks win again. The series is tied up 2-2.
Yeah, and you are right. PJ Tucker's done as good of a job as anybody can do on Durant. And it is interesting that Giannis, because you'd think build-wise and athleticism-wise, if there's ever somebody built to guard Durant, it would be Giannis.
Right.
But for
if I had to
reason,
create in a lab the best defender to go against KD, it would be him.
You would think it'd be him, right? Because he almost just looks like a jacked version of Kevin Durant, but Durant for some reason gives him buckets even more so than he does PJ Tucker. And maybe it's other things going on there. PJ Tucker is a really strong guy, and he's still
knows him well. On a personal level. And it's funny that we say that. I had this thought when I was looking at the stats earlier that Durant still scored 28 points tonight. But to hold a scorer like Kevin Durant to 28 points is actually really good.
Well, especially to hold him 28 when he's going to start shooting all the time.
It's points per shot, really. So if you hold Kevin Durant to 28 and it took him 24 shots to get there, you did a good job.
And I guess at the same fact too, Durant is playing without Harden, and now Kyrie is down.
And both of them are unsure timetables, right? Like,
Yeah.
So like we've gone into a situation where they look like they have the legitimate super team, and now we don't know, and maybe KD will come out and score so many points that it doesn't matter. But this series could easily flip at this point.
I think clearly you see at full strength who the better team is. It just the Nets are just going to outscore you. They have too many weapons. If Blake's going to play like the way he has, they're going to be good. I mean, even in Game 3 without Harden and a healthy Kyrie, they didn't play necessarily great, but they were. I mean, Bruce Brown lost his damn mind for the whole fourth quarter. I don't know what I was watching. That man thought he was, I don't know, he thought he was Superman all of a sudden. But they're Bruce Brown losing his mind away from probably being up 3-0. Yeah. And now it's just, but that's the playoffs. Like, so something like that happens, then it's 2-1. Now Kyrie gets hurt, everything changes.
Yeah. And even from a Bucks perspective, the series is like the glass half full versus glass half empty situation, because you're 2-2, so glass half full is like we got a real shot now to win, like we're right here. But the glass half empty is, are we predictable? Like, is there something wrong with our makeup even now that we're getting held to 86 points 2 straight games against a team that was not even considered a good defensive team coming into the playoffs? And we really struggle to score at times. Now, I mean, they did enough to win today, and even in Game 3 in that low-scoring game. But it's not what I expected to see. I would have thought this is a high-scoring series, and it really hasn't.
I will say, though, to the Nets' credit, they played pretty well defensively in the playoffs.
That's true, but
they really have.
And maybe that was expected to some extent that they would pick it up for the playoffs. But it's been interesting to see the Bucks, who are the second highest scoring team in the NBA this year.
Right. I think they were 1 and 2. I think the Nets were 1 and 2.
Right.
The Bucks.
Right.
So, I mean, now it's, can KD basically overcome all these injuries? And in kind of a crappy way. I mean, I don't know. I just hate seeing any team have injuries like that. Have a true championship chance. So that kind of sucks.
So moving forward, Ben, you had an interesting point when we were off recording this, is that about the ratings and moving forward with the ratings and how for a while there the NBA was down in ratings, they're bouncing back up. But anyways, go ahead and explain your theory. I like this.
Thought. Last year was a weird year. We had the bubble and all that, and there was, the ratings did go down, especially from a few years back, pretty heavily in this regular season. They're picking up a little bit now. People are gaining interest again. They're able to go to the games again. The fan interest is growing, but nonetheless, it's an interesting time for the NBA. It's in transition. We're coming to a new generation of stars, starting to maybe really run the league. The LeBron, the Steph, really were both either early exits in the playoffs or didn't make it at all. But also, there's been kind of the decline of the super team. For years, we had LeBron with the Heat. We had LeBron coming back to the Cavs. We had the Warriors, even before they added Durant, became even a super duper team. We had all these teams clashing year after year in the playoffs. And for the casual fan, this meant you either had a team to latch on to or to root against. And right now, the league is become more diluted. Most teams only have 2 superstars. The one that has 3, the Nets, have so many injuries that they've never really put it together as a super team this year, at least for an extended stretch of time. And not only that, but it's the younger brother teams that are picking it up. We got the Clippers still in it, not the Lakers. It's an LA team. They got stars, but they don't feel like they have the same, star power, or in the sense, or maybe just interest for the casual fan. Same with Brooklyn. They're, even though the New York Knicks only make the first round, they get bounced early. There's probably more interest in New York for even that than there is for Brooklyn, possibly having a championship contender. So it's just a weird time. And I wonder if ratings aren't as high as they would be if you still had a super team, especially in a major media market, like as one of these all-time great teams. Like if you had a super team in Boston or the Lakers or somewhere like that, if there'd be more interest right now.
Yeah, and it's a cool. I don't know. I was just looking at the matchups in my head, and that's just a cool theory of the fact that, like you said, there's a new generation of superstars coming in that are kind of leading the way. The Giannis, the Embiid, Trae Young,
Booker.
yeah,
Mitchell,
which it's going to be an interesting.
And do these guys have the same star like power in terms of driving interest as LeBron has had all these years, as Jordan did before him, as Kobe had, as Shaq had, and it remains to be seen maybe because there are these times where you go through kind of ups and downs, waxes and wanes in interest in the sport, and I think it's to a large degree tied to, the best players and the best teams being interesting for one reason or another. Even if the basketball is great, right? Like we talked about Jokic, like the Denver could be great and still not have a lot of interest, just like San Antonio for many years was great and just did not drive a lot of interest.
Sure.
I don't know.
So here's a final question for Steele. Pat Riley gets fined $25,000 for I can't remember what it was. I think a tweet that he sent out to LeBron, keeping the door open for LeBron to return a second time to Miami. What do you think, Steele? Is that maybe the best $25,000 Pat Riley ever spent?
Pat Riley said, "Yo, little buzzer, just a tax write-off." He channeled his Lil Wayne from like 05. That's his little tax write-off. Oh, man, that's dumb.
Well, it's funny because Maury did it too. Maury said, "Oh, you want to come join your brother to Steph," kind of thing,
Right. So it's just talk. I mean, he did that he did it a few years ago. The keys under the mat, whatever. But
it's just it makes me chuckle all the time when these guys throw away $25,000 like almost to be funny. Like, okay, they're gonna fine me for this one, but I'm gonna go ahead and throw it out there.
Right.
Final thoughts, Ben.
Just looking forward to see how this season shakes out, playoff wise. I think, we're going to have a Suns Jazz in the Western Conference when it's all said and done. And they're going to end up most likely, if the Nets can get healthy, having Nets Sixers. And those are both interesting matchups. So I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. Steele, final thoughts?
So final thoughts, if it is, in fact, Jazz and Suns, I think it kind of demolishes the idea of best player means because really in the West it was LeBron and Kawhi, right? The last few years we're like, okay, these are going to be the favorites because they have Kawhi, they have LeBron. If both of them get knocked out before, in more of these team-oriented kind of teams get to the Western Conference Finals, that's interesting to me to see that for my whole life, the team with the best player usually makes it. And then out east, I mean, like I think Philly should get it done, and I think matchup-wise, that's super important for Philly. I think as good as the Nets are, even if the Nets are healthy, in a way, could that be a better matchup for Philly? Because now Embiid gets to eat. I mean, he gets to go at, Blake or Claxton, and that's nothing for him. So I think that's something super interesting to watch as far as matchups go out east. But I agree with Ben. I think it'll be Jazz and the Suns in the West.
Yeah. That's what it's looking to be. Hey, only time will tell. Hey, this has been more playoff updates for you from the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. We'll see you next time.
I'm Ben Sperry, and this was the Give and Go Basketball Podcast.